Hemos convocado a esta rueda de prensa para dar a conocer
report on a very important document which has come out from inside Cuba, signed by the three main union organizations which are struggling within the country in favor of union freedom and in favor of the Cuban workers. This document reached us last week, and among the colleagues, Pedro Ramos and Carmelo Diaz, two ex-political prisoners, two union leaders who maintain links with their organization in Cuba, will publish it this afternoon. Pedro Ramos, secretary of the Cuban unions, the independent unions in Cuba. We, the below signed, representing the National Independent Confederation of Unions in Cuba, the Confederation of Independent Unions, CTC, and the Single Confederation of Unions, considering that the independent unions in Cuba, in principle, have programs of action similar, both politically as well as for the conquest of democracy and individual freedom and collective freedom, as well as the demands for the improvement in the quality of life and work of the salaried workers in our country, reaffirm our commitment in the struggle for the complete effect of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, with respect for labor rights and the compliance with the international conventions of the ILO. Observe that the regime in power violates these rights, which the Republic of Cuba is obliged to respect because it's a signatory. They trample underfoot these rights and the freedom of unions and the independent representation of workers. With the declaration of the government of massively laying off hundreds of thousands of workers, the announcements of further repressive measures and disciplinary measures at the work centers, which retains the essence of collectivism and state property of the means of productions, the centralization of decisions and the planning, and the individual prohibition to accumulate wealth, but they demand greater productivity from the companies and the workers, denying economic, political, and cultural independent freedom, and they do not promise anything more than more control and repression, verifying that the announced objectives in the plans for the economic and social policies submitted to the consideration of the 6th Congress of the Cuban Communist Party in Cuba constitute a plan for more labor and social repression, recognizing that the development of the forms of work as self-employed people is limited because they do not have the economic freedoms necessary, but as a means of controlling the workers laid off by the government, and they place them at a disadvantage, and they're facing draconian taxes. And the self-employed should have independent unions for their demands. Concerned with the magnitude and the gravity, which for the first time in the last half-century has faced the worker movement, we make a call for the workers affiliated or not to independent unions to join forces in the challenges imposed on us presently as a consequence. We agree to create the Independent Coalition of Workers in Cuba to unify the objective and the political policies, economic and social policies, to adopt a joint plan of action. We to demand the right to legally represent represent their members before management and the government, to guaranteed by the international standards and obligatory for Cuba, to communicate to the institutions internationally, the coalition, and for the International Union Confederation, CSA, and the Interconvention of the Americas, CSA, to request the inclusion in the registration on the Republic of Cuba, to disseminate these agreements at the Central Organization of Union Workers, the self-employed and small companies. The member of this coalition will maintain their autonomy in accordance with the statutes. To the holding of their first Congress, done in Havana, 30th of March of 2011, signed Maria Elena Milmarecos, Secretary General of the National Independent Confederation of Workers in Cuba, Manuel Perez, Secretary General of the Single Convention of Union Workers, Angel Carrillo, Secretary General of the Confederation of Independent Workers in Cuba. No microphone for the speaker. Of course, if the government is obliged, the document will be placed on the and this is part of the Ministry of Justice. In fact, the government, in addition to publicizing international public opinion and national public opinion in an unofficial way, they find out about this decisive important step which is given in the unity of independent unions. I think that now, at this time, the unions have been strengthened. They will be better. Their representatives will be more united to make decisions, to definitely make known to world public opinion that there is a coalition of independent unions in Cuba outside of the bureaucratic official organization. There is a coalition of independent unions in Cuba which really are identified and respond to the interests of the working class in Cuba. That is very important because many unionists in Cuba have gone to jail. Others have been laid off, and with this new unit there will be more strength because there is strength in numbers to carry out all of the plans of independent unions in Cuba, and furthermore other plans around the world with respect to the defense of workers, which the Cuban government has limited to the Cuban workers. With this new coalition, they will know of these plans internationally in the defense of workers anywhere in the world. And now the Cuban workers will learn with this major step taken forward and the independent unions. Have you made copies of this document? Any other question? No microphone for the speaker. Of course, it has backing. That's why we're here. It has us, and it's also known to major union entities around the world. They've been informed of this document, and now the press knows of it, and this is backing. If the government is going to act violently, as they usually do, against the independent unions, the workers are the most important element. They're afraid of independent unions because, and they're fearful that the workers will join forces. This means that they will work together. Why? Because the workers, it is the most numerous group in any society. And furthermore, they make all their mistakes against them. The workers don't want to face up to the mistakes made by the Cuban government.